My guest today is Scott Dolch, President and CEO of the newly rebranded Connecticut Restaurant and Hospitality Association. Scott has guided the association through some major growth, including its recent rebrand, representing Connecticut's $21 billion hospitality industry. This includes over 9,000 restaurants, nearly 400 hotels. He's also expanded the association's philanthropic arm, the Connecticut Hospitality Educational Foundation, or CHEF, with programs for education, scholarships, and workforce development. Please welcome my guest, Scott Dolch. Welcome.
Thank you, PJ. Really excited to be here.
It's great to have you here. And I knew that when you were in Stanford this morning for the meeting, I was like, we got to get him on the podcast. There's some exciting things happening. Hey Stanford is your number one resource for all things local. And if you're tuning into this podcast, I'm guessing the city of Stanford holds a special place in your heart. So if you want to rep the city of Stanford, Hey Stanford, the store is where it's at. We make comfy, stylish hoodies and tees inspired by our city. Perfect for anyone who wants to rep Stanford while keeping it local. Hey Stanford, the store is your go-to for local goods, gifts, apparels, and more. Stop by in person at the Stanford Town Center or shop online at heystanford.com. Your one-stop spot to support local and look great doing it.
It's an exciting start to the year.
Yeah.
Obviously, taking on hospitality from being almost 8 years in this role, running the restaurant association, to now bring hotels, inns, and bed and breakfasts into the fold, allowing them to become members, allowing them to have a voice, and hopefully in return trying to be an advocate on a state and federal and local level, but also to help promote them. We have some incredible accommodation lodging, places all around the state, especially here in Stanford, and they need to be, need a stronger voice. And I'm hoping our association could do that.
So let's see, the rebrand is Connecticut Restaurant Association to the Connecticut Restaurant and Hospitality Association.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with us is the word hospitality is really the driver here. I think if I had my druthers with the board, maybe just becoming Hospitality Association, but I think we've created such a brand awareness with the Connecticut Restaurant Association at the state capitol with the governor and leaders. I think it would have been hard to right away just peel that off. But I think our ultimate goal is everything is hospitality and making sure we're representing all those hospitality businesses, which a restaurant falls under that. Obviously, a hotel does as well, an inn, a caterer, a private event venue. So we're really trying to represent the 170,000 employees that we now have under this umbrella. It's about a $21 billion industry to the state. Just in tax alone, it's about $1.5 billion that we spend on sales and use tax, occupancy tax that goes back to the state every year. So it's a huge industry that I think needs to be viewed that way when it comes to legislators and to everyone, and how important this industry is for the viable success of our state.
Talk to me about those numbers again, the tax that goes back to the state.
So yeah, the sales and use tax is something that we track a lot, goes to the general fund, helps pay really a huge portion of the budget of the state. It's about a little over $6 billion, and about 1.5 of that comes just from our industry directly. It's about 1.3 in sales tax. We haven't even gotten into the property tax and other things that our businesses pay. And then occupancy tax is another $170 million, which is that 15% when you come and stay in a hotel in our state. We have a very high occupancy tax, the highest in the country. Unfortunately, none of those dollars really generate back into helping our industry and helping tourism and helping get more and more people to travel in or even travel across the state. So we're working on that as well.
I think I read somewhere that it was this has been in the works for about 3 years or so. Why was now the right time to make this happen?
Such a great question. Listen, I think, for me as a person, it's always about moving forward and, never being stagnant in this role. How do we continue to grow the association? And, really COVID, even prior to COVID, we had talked about it because this isn't out of flux with other states. We become the 31st state to combine restaurants and hotels together. So a lot of my peers, CEOs around the country that that have mentored me in this role, already have hotels under the umbrella. So I kind of always like, hey, this might be the next evolution. We got to get our restaurant association strong and vibrant. But then that next, and unfortunately COVID hit and it became, hey, listen, all hands on deck. This is what we have to deal with right now. Really, once we got through COVID, about 2 years removed, the conversation started up again and said, hey, what's this look like for me personally, for my team? How do we grow what we're already doing? And those conversations happened over the last 3 years in different ways. There's other associations. There is a lodging association that's still intact. We tried to figure out a way to merge, but at the end of the day, we went a different route. We brought on 7 board members that represent some of the 7 of the largest hotel groups in the state, which is the first step. But we still represent all these smaller inns and bed and breakfasts and places around the state that we want to be a voice for and make sure that we're a resource. And a lot of them are members of ours because they have restaurants within them. I think people lose sight of that most hotels have a food element. They all do. They either have a restaurant or they have a catering venue. They're doing weddings. They have a lot of the same challenges as a restaurant or a private event venue does. So the synergy has been very easy to talk through. And I think, even as I've talked to the hotelier and the operators, they're just excited about having, someone to be that resource for them.
Right. We talked about it a little bit earlier today, but sometimes as a restaurant or hotel operator, these changes are happening at such a high level that it might take a minute for it to get to them at that level. So having a resource like the association is beneficial.
Yeah, without question. I think, I have to be at the Capitol. I have to testify later today remotely. I have to go down to DC next week because that's my job. My job is to represent this industry as best I can. But, when you're inside of a restaurant or you're inside of a hotel, you're inside your 4 walls, you kind of lose sight of what else is going on. And it's our job to communicate that to you, give you emails and provide you information that is, what you need right now, but also, you don't need to be dealing with those issues or, hey, when things are on fire and we need to figure out this bill or we need to go make sure this doesn't affect you, then yes, I'm going to call for them to, hey, come to the Capitol. Hey, I need you to call your legislator. But for the most part, a lot of it is, giving them some high level stuff, but really try not to get into the weeds because they hopefully know that we're doing those things for them and we're representing them. So they don't need to be as involved. But they know when I hit the panic button sometimes, when there's definitely some pieces of legislation that are scary and can have drastic effects on the industry, I do need their help and their support, and that means a lot. I would say to any of the operators that are listening, it is about their voice sometimes. The legislators and the governor or even other politicians down in DC, they don't want to hear from me. I am already a lobbyist. They want to hear from these operators, especially in their district, and learn, okay, how does this affect them or how does it not? And I think those voices matter most. And when I use them and the relationships that they either have with these elected officials also are critical, because guess what? Everyone goes inside of a restaurant. Everyone travels to hotels. They all know, and when you can better educate them, and it can come from them, it's so meaningful.
Right, absolutely. When you started in, I think I read 2018, there was just under 400 members in the association. Now it's up to over 2,100.
It is, but as Yvette knows and the rest of my team, it's still, I would say, about 9,100 restaurants around the state. So, wow. We're still in the 23, 24% range, give or take. As I look from our peers, to get 100% is almost impossible, but our really good associations are around 35, 40%. So we're on that pace, but there's different pockets. There's area. Obviously, being down here, I still think, sometimes Fairfield County, some of the restaurateurs have never been involved. Our old school, getting a lot of critique in the past, was we're the old Hartford County Boys Club. That's kind of the board. And we really had to expand our board and have more Fairfield County voices in Litchfield County and New London County, and making sure they understand that. And I think that's been a big part of the change. But there's still growth pockets for us that we'll continue to work on. And I'm hoping, 3,000 members, 3,500 members, if we can get there. And the same with like we said before, there's only 400, a little less than 400 hotel properties. So a lot of people say to me, hey, are you still going to be our voice for restaurants? Like now you have hotels, it's a big ask. I'm hoping to expand our team, but also it is, probably about 150 accounts versus the other, 3,000 accounts we're chasing with restaurants. So, it's definitely important and we're going to focus on it, but we're also not going to lose sight of who we are and making sure our restaurants know we're supporting them every day.
I'm curious about that growth. When 400 to over 2,000, were there any kind of strategies or anything that you implemented during that time that kind of like helped drive that?
I think the biggest thing is, I think I said it today, to me, it's not about ever really making a sales pitch and trying to sell you. If you need to sell you what you're doing and they'll see the value, and it's word of mouth. I think that, our board, our members, hopefully they see the value that we're providing. And when people are calling them because they're in a pinch, they're dealing with something, like they know to use us as that resource. And then in turn, like, oh, I didn't realize that. Or, someone sent me your emails and like the advocacy stuff, like this is great. How do I get that? And like, so I think that really helped the growth. Selfishly, the pandemic was a huge asset for the association. It was a brutal time for the industry, but it made us relevant.
Right.
I was on the news 5 times a day. I was with the governor's daily calls, talking about reopening and glove mandates and plexiglass and, 6-foot spacing. And I think that people really cared about, their restaurants, and we used that to our advantage. People saw us, and we did a call. I did a call every morning for about the first 183 days of COVID. We did a call every morning at 9 a.m. and I allowed any member, non-member to be on the call. And really that call could have lasted 5 minutes. Some days it lasted an hour. And it was really, hey, this is what I know. This is what I know in DC. This is what I know at the state. This is what I know moving forward. These are the dates to reopen, or this is what we're doing with the plexiglass. This is what we're pushing. These are, grants, PPP grants. This is what you need to be applying for. That communication was critical. And I think that kind of springboarded our growth, because I think more and more people started to be like, oh, that's what the Restaurant Association does. That's what they're doing every day. And I think that really helped us. We saw a huge surge in COVID, but also coming out of COVID. And as much as how difficult of a time it was, I always say, hey, it gave us that voice.
Yeah, you're right. Obviously COVID was a difficult time for many, but I feel like maybe just being so close to it, the restaurant industry was just hugely impacted.
It was. Everyone cared about the restaurants. And, another stat that we talk about all the time, we lead the country. 97% of full service restaurants in Connecticut are independently owned. It's the highest in the country. We talk about it in Stamford. I know Mike from Stamford Downtown talked about today about like wanting to talk about the international side. Well, it's true. Like you could probably name 70 countries right now, and we could probably find a first or second generation restaurant, with that culture, that cuisine within probably a walking distance. And I think that that's what's unique about the entire state, that we have these independent restaurateurs. For the most part, they maybe own 1 location or 2 locations. It's not very chain and franchise heavy.
Right.
And that's what is an unbelievable stat that we need to promote more, because, I think also people's palates in the cuisine, it's changing. I think younger generation are willing to try and want those experiences and to try different things. And for me to take you to, like even tonight, we're going to Puerto Vallarta, like, and the history of Saul and his son Jacob, like having that Mexican cuisine that they have, but obviously they're bringing in chefs from all around the state with this, but that's something that we should be very proud of in Connecticut, and we need to promote more. And going back to the hotels as well, like we have some we have like the Griswold Inn, 1776, the inns who stayed there and the history of that, or you have, the 2 casinos. You've got, obviously down here in Stamford with what, RMS Properties and with the Lloyd and what they've built and what that is. And you've got obviously the Courtyard and the Stamford, hotel and all those the stories behind those. And you have the inns up in Litchfield County and around the state that have such rich history that, we need to be telling those stories and getting people more excited and be proud of what we have.
Yeah, absolutely. That term Stanford as a pass-through, or Connecticut as a pass-through state, it's an old term. It's becoming a destination. It always has been a destination, but it's an old term that gets me angry when I hear it sometimes.
I'm in the same boat as you. I love even being here today, PJ, because I think learning from you about you growing up here in Stamford and how proud you are of this city, and what you've done with that and taken that to heart. We need more of that. And I think that's just it. Like as I walk around the people that are from Stamford and know, and they're so proud of what it has been and what it's going to be. I think that people lose sight of that in Connecticut and think, oh, we're a pass-through state, or you're just a small state that, is not really known to be a destination. And it's the farthest thing from the truth.
Right.
And it's also, you have to believe in it first. If you don't believe in it first and aren't selling it and pitching it, it's really hard to make others believe that same thing. And I think that's getting more and more people like yourself and others that are doing that. We've seen the change. We're seeing, people looking at Connecticut, I think, in a different way than they ever have before.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's thanks to the great work that you've done. Anthony had done with a lot of the tourism stuff. I actually want to dive into that a little bit. But I want to go back to something you said before as
Sure.
The industry as a single economic ecosystem. Elaborate on that a little bit for me.
I think, when you think of the hospitality sector and you think about the industry as a whole, I mean, you could bring others into this fold down the road. When you talk about tourism and hospitality, it is an ecosystem. It's one large group. You could talk about breweries. You could talk about the aquariums. You could talk about the museums, people traveling, the amphitheater and concerts and theaters and shows. Like everything kind of revolves around that hospitality and the experience you're coming for of a destination. I think, listen, we're going to have other groups that are involved, but for us, we want to be that leader, to make sure that we're doing everything we can to really promote these businesses and make them, hopefully, be successful and grow, and also promote like today being in Stamford. I want to see Stamford in 10 years, be better than it was yesterday and it is tomorrow. And like what more restaurants can be here? Can we get more hotels? How do we get the business community back? And it's the economic development side, which is why the tourism office, when you talk with Anthony, has everything to do with it. Like I say to the governor all the time, before you move somewhere, you probably go and visit it first. Or if you're going to look for a job, you're going to go there, get interviewed, then they're going to take you out, you're going to stay the night, you're going to go to a restaurant, and you're going to say, hey, can I live here? Can I raise if I have kids, am I bringing my kids here and my significant other? All of that starts with the tourist side first.
Right.
And when people have a good feeling about Connecticut, like, hey, I could see myself, living here, living here long-term, working here. That's where we are really that front porch. I kind of go back to that athletic side where they say athletics is the front porch of a university. I think the tourism side and hospitality is the front porch of what our state can be. And for the long-term businesses that want to come here and hopefully bring their business here, you want to come here and move here. Universities, I want to come to college here, but then I also want to stay here for life after. So all of that plays that role. And I think we need to be that front porch in a sense and that leader first.
We're huge proponents of tourism here in Stamford, and it's just driving all that activity here to Stamford. There's so many great things to do here. How does the association leverage that tourism and the events to benefit both the restaurants and the hotels?
I think the first thing is, I'll just say it, like our state needs to do more. As a state level, we're down to a $4.5 million budget. It was $12 million 2 years ago. Governor Malloy, as a Stamford mayor, it was at 17 years ago. It was a $15 million budget. We're now down to 4.5. Just think of inflation, like where that dollar doesn't go anywhere. And I think that, as the mayor knows and other mayors around the state, like they need to help voice that and how we get more dollars, because we need, especially as I've learned about hotels, even in the first, obviously 3 years, but the first 2 weeks of this launch is 70% of their business is tourists, people coming in. So if there's not people telling our story outside, like for businesses to come in, for people to just travel, like they're not going to fill their hotels. So we need to do more. So it starts at the state, but we're fortunate. I would say that, the city of Stamford is fortunate with Mayor Simmons and what she's done. And she's been a close friend of mine when she used to work up, my first couple of years, really cutting my teeth at the Capitol, and she was a rep. And she gets it. And I think, she talks to me and calls me all the time about, how she can help, what she could do in Stamford. How do we become more of a destination culinary, talking about Bedford Street, talking about, different things that can happen and ways she can support, even coming out of COVID with the ARPA dollars and, what I love about her, she's like, hey, I heard this in West Hartford. Hey, I heard this in New Haven. Like, how can we do something similar? How's that working? And trying to get her those answers. And I think that Leah on her team as well, and obviously her coming today to continue to be that voice. And, I texted her a couple days before, like, love for you to stop by. I think that's that's why I say to all the owner operators that I know, like you're fortunate to have a mayor that does see that, and obviously continue to work with her and her team to find ways to bring more people into Stamford, whether that is businesses, whether that is tourists, whether it's people coming to live in the apartments that are here, and benefiting these businesses in the long term. And I think she's doing a great job.
I think so too. With the recent rebrand, your board grew from 25 to 35 seats. How does that change priorities for the association, new goals, new objectives?
Such a great question. It's a bigger board, more to manage, but listen, I'm excited. We added 11 new board members in December.
Wow.
So we added 5 hoteliers. We had 2 already in Foxwoods and Saybrook Resort. But then we added 5 new. But we also added 6 restaurateurs because as we like have that opportunity and like to have 11 new faces that are excited and the drive, it's just a little more work for us, but you know, even yesterday we had a big through our foundation, our Culinary high school competition. I saw about 4 of the 11 new board members made it down to Mohegan, and just their experience, their energy, like this is an amazing event, you know, and it's important for us to see that growth even in Fairfield County, where we added, you know, Chris Sexton from Richfield and Hoodoo Brown, and Chris has always kind of been involved, but so excited to get him into a kind of a leadership role. Obviously Adam Halberg in Barcelona has always been a strong voice, but to get him on our board and what he's doing around the country as well is having an impact. And he's calling me about Minneapolis and what they're doing in DC, and like we talk all the time more on a federal level and there's other cities, and this is why we don't want this to happen, but he's, you know, great. Adam Zaka with Z Hospitality and his dad, and what that history of what he's done, and I'm excited for Adam's energy. But those are just 3 right now that we've added, besides having others, and Michael Marchetti and Luke Fenner, and like this talking to the history of what the Connecticut Restaurant Association was to obviously the CRHA is now, but making sure we have voices down here, you know, that are representing, you know, this industry and can be those leaders and be, and I call on them a lot. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of work, but at the same time, I always tell them, like, you know, your job's not to sit on a board, your job is to serve on the board. Mm. And it is a lot to ask, but also to be a resource to a lot of other owner operators. It's important that they have that opportunity. Hey, I'm going to call on you and say, hey, you know what, Adam, I might need you to help out this. If someone called me down in your area, can you go stop in and see them and just, you know, be that resource for them, because you understand. And those have been invaluable over the last 8 years that I've seen with my board. Because it's one thing for me I'm not a restaurateur, for me to go in and try to help, but for another operator to peel back the onion and say, hey, let's really dig into your struggles. Let's dig into your labor costs. Let's dig into how are you managing, where are your pain points, and let me see how I can help.
You mentioned Michael Marchetti, who has been a friend for a long time. He was on this podcast a couple weeks ago. And he even mentioned this too, as competitive as the restaurant industry can be, it's such a close-knit group of people where they're all leaning on each other for best practices and just as neighbors, just talking to each other about what's happening in and around town. And, you know, it's really exciting to see that type of collaboration. Oh,
without question. I think I learned that. I think I said it this morning. Like when I got into this role, I just thought it was too competitive and they didn't want to be friendly. They didn't want to network together. And it's the opposite. I think rising tide rises all ships. And especially in the restaurant world, they want to see other restaurants be successful because, you know, someone said to me a long time ago, like, the olden days of going to the same restaurant every Friday night and that's just what you did is not the same anymore. People want to go and experience other experiences. So if there's options within where they can drive to and say, hey, I'm going to try this weekend, or, you know, on a Saturday night, I'm going to try this other restaurant, or I heard this, like that's what you want. And you start to see, that's why, you know, you see Stamford, you know, all the different restaurants that are popped up and how successful they are. The same in West Hartford, the same in New Haven, like they become culinary destinations that people want to go and visit. And I think that the camaraderie between the industry, and it's also like, I've heard it even from Michael. He's like, I feel like when we started, Hartford County had that, and we're really building something, you know, with Bill Taby and obviously Chris Sexton and Michael Marchetti and Adam and you know, Robin Selden and others that have been on our board and sat, you know, like it's important for me to say, hey, you guys, you know, if you don't know each other, even today at our event, like where others are meeting each other that had never met before. And I was like, this is what I love why we do it, because, you know, like I'm going to stop and go see your restaurant. I'm going to come over. I want to go to your hotel. Like that's a win for us if he's hosting an event.
Talking about advocacy a little bit, I wrote down some numbers here, but your combined membership represents 170,000 employees and 1.5 billion in state taxes. What are the top priorities for the association this year?
Well, it's a short session, this session. So, what that means for anyone listening in is obviously we're going into a gubernatorial election and everyone else is getting elected. So they shorten the session so they can get out and campaign. So it'll end in May. It started in late February, where it's usually January to June. In a short session, it's supposed to not have anything that really is budgetarily. So they try not to say, and I laugh that, there can always be something, always be challenges. I think the first thing is we keep an eye out on any pieces of legislation that we might have to play defense on that can have a drastic effect on small businesses, whether it's, in labor, whether it's, environment, things like those sides. We'll have conversations. But I think we also, I feel like the association for so many years was playing so much defense, which we have to do. And I hate to say it, unfortunately, educating legislators on how important this industry is sometimes isn't always helpful, but we have to play D. But in my job, I always we need to play more offense. We need to find pieces of legislation that actually can help and build alliances with legislators that maybe we wouldn't have in the past. So, for us this year, obviously tourism is huge. I'm going to testify today. I'll testify at least another 6 or 7 times on different bills and ways to fund the tourism office and help them moving forward. That's kind of a no-brainer. But I think another one that I didn't even talk about this morning, but is a credit card swipe fee, interchange fee, and what that is for any of the listeners. All merchants, retail, we all know that 92% of payment now is credit card or Apple Pay or everything else, and we're paying fees on that for our goods and services. We understand that there's a price to pay to have to use credit cards and the benefit of that. However, the merchants in Connecticut are also paying fees on sales tax. So to collect the state sales tax, they're having to pay 2.25%, 3.5% if it's American Express. Occupancy tax with hotels, the 15% occupancy. They're also paying a portion of that of a percentage to the credit card companies. We don't think that's fair. We don't think that is right. Obviously, we're not the only state to try to pass this legislation. We were fortunate Illinois got this over the finish line 2 years ago, went to court. It's been litigated in court now for almost a year and a half. And a lot of legislators say to me, hey, we're not going to touch it. It's in litigation. Let's figure out what happens in Illinois first. The banks obviously came out hard, swinging, saying, we can't do this. We need those dollars for fraud protection or whatever that it might be. And I've made the argument, New Hampshire and Delaware don't have sales tax. Why would you treat our restaurants and merchants differently if you can do all the same things? And they don't really have an argument back to that. But that bill, Illinois about 2 weeks ago got a huge ruling from a judge in favor of the merchants. Put the federal banks back into scope, a huge win, and we're hoping to maybe get that bill back through a committee here in the next couple weeks. Hopefully maybe see if we can get something punched through. I still think it's going to be hard in a short session, but you better believe we're going to come out swinging the gubernatorial election and as well as next session, because I don't think it's fair. I mean, you're going to save a restaurant anywhere between $4,000 and $7,000 a year net profit that they're right now paying out the back door to these credit card companies. So, and the same here, inside this space and what you guys pay in fees. I get it. You have goods and services, you got to pay those fees, but why on sales tax? The state should pay it. Obviously, that's going to be a much harder, heavier lift. I think we should just eliminate it. So that's an offensive bill that we're looking at. I think, there's many other things that we continue to look through. The Healthcare Association, healthcare, we got to find better solutions, as I just testified on ways to make healthcare more affordable for small businesses. I think coming out of COVID, more of our industry called me and said, I need to retain people. People are asking about healthcare. It's less about how much they make now. They need these benefits. They need 401k. They need healthcare. So we need to do our job as associations to find ways to bring those costs down and to make it more affordable. So I like playing offense a lot more than I do playing defense. Maybe that's a former quarterback in me as well. But it also, we've seen great alliances and relationships with elected officials that we might not have had in the past, that we start talking about a bill that can affect their constituents or even themselves that they own and run a business. And they start to, take that to heart and have really good open dialogue. And sometimes that helps us on defense as well. We say, hey, we're working together here, but this piece of legislation, let me explain to you why this hurts us if this was to go through.
You clearly listen to the restaurants and the hotels that are in this association. How do you ensure that you have a voice at the state level?
Well, I think everything is about relationships and the relationships that you have and the network that you're building. And, I hope as my relationship I have with Mayor Simmons to my relationship with the governor. I hope that they feel I'm genuine, that I feel like, hey, if I'm asking for something, there's a reason for it. I need them to be involved. And the same in return. If they're asking me to get involved in something, I'm going to look at it. And I think that genuine side of who I am and who my team is so important at the Capitol, because legislators, listen, they're hearing from hundreds of different groups. They're looking at hundreds of different bills. Sometimes are not in our world. And sometimes, I don't take offense to that in so many ways, but having a seat at the table is critical. And I think that's what I try to tell the hotels is my hope of you coming a part of the CRHA is we've built that. We've earned that seat that we have now when something is going down, that whether it's the governor or whether it's, legislative leaders, they're pulling us into that room and we're talking about major issues. We're talking about, the cannabis reform bill, or we're talking about AI. Like we have built that. And I think that the hope is to bring the hotels in, and then and adding to that is my hope is their voice, they start to understand how important their voice is, in some of these issues, and building the relationships with different senators and reps, even their mayors and their different parts of the state, that they can have an impact if they're frustrated about something, that, hey, like build that relationship, I'll help you, and let's figure out how we can go attack it together and find solutions.
One of the programs that you talked about earlier was the foundation. Dive into that a little bit. Tell me a little bit more about the foundation, the education that you guys are bringing.
Yeah, it's our 501c3. I think, when I started, the running joke is you're now the president CEO of also the foundation. I was like 2 weeks in, I was like, can you tell me more? What does that mean? But our foundation really is driven, by a couple different pillars, and it starts with workforce and in the future workforce of our industry and how we can make an impact in that. And there's so many ways. Our flagship is our ProStart program. So we're part of the National Restaurant Educational Foundation, and ProStart is a high school culinary curriculum. It's being taught in Stanford High. We have 23 high schools around the state that teach the curriculum. It's an elective. It's really giving high school kids an education about culinary restaurant management. There's also some hotel sides to this curriculum that we're going to expand on. And then we do a state competition with that. So that's our flagship. We just had our competition yesterday where we're going to send 2 high schools down to Baltimore for our national championships at the end of April, which is awesome, to wave the Connecticut flag and get a chance to compete for a national title. But the foundation also has so many other arms. And we talk about the workforce side. We're working with Department of Corrections in Bridgeport, and we're trying to we're trying to place through a grant. We got federally 70, vets working through that hard right now. Is we're trying to place 70 people that have either been formerly incarcerated or they come from a troubled past in a job. And we're already hiring them anyway, but this is an opportunity to give them training, get them in these businesses around Bridgeport. We're going to hopefully expand that program. We talk about other ways that the foundation, obviously workforce is probably the biggest driver in scholarships and ways to help people get in this industry, but then also the trainings and other ways that I think our foundation can play such a bigger role. We talk about mental health. We talk about other ways that we can what's happening in our industry and what role can the foundation play, and how we can use resources at a state level and at a federal level to get the grants and the dollars to then have an impact on our industry.
When I was growing up, it was math, English, social studies. I love that now there's all these new avenues that students could go down, whether they're interested in culinary, hospitality, a lot of learning moments early on to get kids excited about those things. That's awesome.
It is. It's like yesterday is one of my favorite days of the year to watch these high school students. It's like a version of Chopped. The restaurant management is like Shark Tank. They're pitching to judges a restaurant concept. We had cake decorating for the first time this year. The students were so nervous. You had some cameras there, and they're like, but they performed at a high level. They get, and made 3-course meals. It was so much fun, and the educators are nervous. But that's something I think aside that they, like I said before, about building relationships with legislators, like bringing them out to see that and be like, oh, I know you guys are fighting me hard on this bill, but like you guys do this. I'm like, yeah, this is our future workforce. This is getting people excited,
Right.
Using Mohegan. And obviously we have our big gala at Foxwoods every year, but we partnered with Mohegan for this event. And, we ended up bringing about 25 students in the night before. They got a behind the scenes tour. And I said to the students, it's about, hey, if you ever have an interest in this industry, it might not just be a cook or a chef. There's so many other avenues within hospitality, and why not see one of the best casinos in the world and get a behind the scenes tour with leaders that are kind of telling you their upbringing, how they started and how they got to Mohegan. And I think, the feedback I got from that already is great, and we're going to grow and build off of that.
We're lucky that we have places like Mohegan and Foxwoods, and really places that kids could see that full experience.
Couldn't agree more.
Let's talk about something fun for a minute, which is the CRAzies.
Yeah, you're a panelist here, PJ, as well, and been heavily involved in helping us grow. But yeah, so everyone knows the CRAzies is our annual awards. It's like we say, it's our Oscars of the culinary industry in the state. I have an events background. I worked for the PGA Tour and obviously working in college athletics, running events, and I love to put on events. I say to people all the time, and I say to my staff, if we're running an event and you were invited to go to it, but it wasn't part of your job, you weren't forced there, would you go? And if the answer is no, we need to change what we're doing. If the event's not fun, if it's not something that wants to drive you there, and that's really the theme. You know, when we changed the name to the CRAzies, it was the Salute to Excellence dinner that everyone else called it. My board was not happy. They were like, I don't get it. We're not crazy. And I questioned it. But it was really, you know, my son now is 16, but using the positive connotation of the word crazy, getting off a roller coaster, like, that was crazy, Dad. But it was really Steve Jobs' quote: people that are crazy enough to think they could change the world are the ones that do. And that was really the theme around what we built from the first year. And also about promoting our industry at a high level. And we went from 300 people, now we're at almost 1,600. We sell out every year, seated dinner. But it's also about promoting and elevating our industry outside of our state, regionally and nationally. I hated the fact that we hadn't won a James Beard Award. We won our first one a year ago, first time in 17 years. It was a chef down here in Stanford that won it before that, Chef Jacques. So that bothers me in New York and Boston. So the CRAzies is also a way to elevate our best chefs, our best restaurants. Being a panelist, PJ, you get a chance to see it. I don't get a vote, which is, I need that plausible deniability. But it's important for me to have that event, and it's more than just an award side. But I will say the benefit, when you look at, we had 6 James Beard semifinalists announced a couple weeks ago. It was the highest we've ever had. 5 of them are former either CRAzie winners or nominees. Wow. So it speaks to, we're doing the right thing. The panel and the public vote, we're telling those stories. The stories are getting out there. And that's what I'm so excited about. But also the event itself, we do a really good job of trying to give people a microphone and tell their story. I say it all the time. Every restaurant, every hotel has a story to tell. You just got to go in and ask and learn from it. And the CRAzies is kind of that elevated platform to do that. And when people win, we give them the mic, and there's nothing scripted. They don't know they're going to win, because the only people that know are Yvette and I, and everyone else, the award maker up in Vancouver, are sworn to secrecy. But people don't know until that envelope is unveiled. But that genuine reaction and their emotion up on stage in front of 1,500 of their peers is what makes the event what it is. And then obviously we throw an amazing after party. The team at Foxwoods, led by Jason Guy as their CEO, who's on our board, has been a huge partner of ours since I took over. And him and I always try to figure out how we're going to make the next year better. What else can we do? And the partners we have there, their culinary team. But I'm excited every year, the CRAzies, of what it's going to be. And people are always like, oh, you're not going to top last year. It's not going to be. And I just kind of laugh. I'm like, it's going to be different. But it's going to be great, because it's going to be different, and there's going to be new winners. There's going to be new stories to tell, and people like to say it's a good time. People have a great time, and the feedback and letting their hair down. They work so hard in our industry all year long to kind of give them the night to have that togetherness and celebrate is so important.
I was just going to say the industry works so hard, and even during the holidays, they're working hard, and that's when this takes place. But to watch them just let loose for one night and just enjoy themselves, it's fun to watch.
It is. It's and to have that setting. We have that destination. We have, I have many states that travel in, CEOs that come watch our event and try to mimic it. And I give them as much feedback. I'm actually trying to help Puerto Rico's trying to do something down there. And the CEO down there, Gadiel, and I are very close, and how I can help Gadiel and others. But I also say, hey, the other challenge is you don't have a Foxwoods or Mohegan. Right. We have a destination. We have a great partner. You have to try to find that. But, there's other ways you can do it. You can't just give up because maybe you don't have that. But the partnerships are what has made that event grow so much, because people have bought in. It's not my event. It's not my staff's event. It's PJ. It's much yours, and you getting involved, and the panelists, and taking honest feedback too. My events background, I learned working with the PGA Tour, you have to be willing to critique yourself and understand that just because you ran an event and you thought it was the greatest thing ever, there's other people that might not have thought that, or there are ways you can make it better the next time. And I think we always do that every year. We have a great debrief with our team. We take everyone's feedback, and I think it's elevated the event each year because of how we look at it and how we, strive to make it better.
planning events is not easy. So pulling something off like that is really impressive.
It is. But last thing I'd say, PJ, to that is I can't really, I know everyone likes to say that's me, but I know a vet that's here with me today, but my staff, like, I think people lose sight of, it's a almost 1,600 person seated dinner, 2-hour reception before, after party after, in a casino, with a 2-hour program, with a staff of 5 and some interns and really volunteers that show up day of. I know I'm used to that, the travelers running off a thin staff, but like what they do and the work that goes into running an event at that scale, there's no way it would be what it is without them. And I'm so fortunate to have the team that I do. I mean, I joke about like the whiteboards as a former quarterback in my office, but we seat 1,550 people. It looks like the royal wedding, when you walk in our office in late November as we're trying to seat the room. But I'd say it takes a village, but we don't have a village. It takes really people dedicated and passionate about loving what they do and having, Katie, Liz, Yvette, and Shannon, and even Sophia and Lexi, our interns this year from UConn. I'm so fortunate to have what we have in the team.
I'm very fortunate. That's wonderful. Selfishly, Stanford is a 2-time Hall of Fame member with Polices and Columbus Park, both members of the Hall of Fame of the CRAzies. So that's great to see too. We talk about a lot of Connecticut having a moment in the food industry, but it's really part of the conversation now. And you talked about the James Beard winners, and there's been national attention on the pizza. Mystic is such a destination for dining and even hospitality now with the hotels there. Let's talk about that a little bit in terms of just getting more visitors to the state.
Well, I think it starts with culinary tourism. It's a real thing. People travel for food.
They do.
They always have. I think that people lose sight of that a little bit in Connecticut, and the pizza campaign that Anthony and many others, Michael Pollack and others, had a lot to do with. Like, kudos to them. And to take that, I have that competitive side as well, where like, listen, it's our opinion that we have the best state pizza in the country as a state, and we do. When you think of, besides New Haven and the original 3 or 4, however you want to look at it, but then the other, what we learned through the process of that, all the other pizzerias and obviously down here in Stanford and Colony, and that story and how it started, and they've expanded, and knowing their team and their partners, and I see the hot oil shirts as I walked in here, but the pride at what pizza means, but the different pizzerias we have around the state, and also the tentacles of people that have maybe worked at these places, worked at Pepe's, and now work at a different and open their own spot up, or they've moved on, or you look at like Naples and Farmington, which is a staple, and Kurt and all the people that have worked for him. So to see that, but then just overall, like, we have incredible chefs, incredible restaurants. I just think the story needs to be told. I think that, it's not that we don't have it. It's just we have to continue to find more ways to tell the story. Because people, we go back to earlier today, we talk about the experience in hospitality. And I don't know what it is, but I just think food tastes better when you have a story behind it, when you're trying it, or if it, and who the chef is and what they're doing, and what they're working on and bringing out to you. As I love when people come up to me and say, "Hey, I want to take my wife out to dinner. I'm going to this area. You have any, what's your favorite?" I don't have a favorite, to be clear, but I love giving them those experiences. I sent someone down to the Laurel and Ashley Flagg, our chef of the year, just for a birthday, and they weren't asking for much, and I just texted Ash and I was like, "Hey, like, they got an 8:30, can they get a little bit earlier?" Like, it was like the day before, and she's like, "Yeah, I'll make it work, I'll make them fit." I brought them out champagne, and like they felt like they were royalty, and they, those little things, like I love those parts, because they were like, the food was phenomenal. I forgot that she was at Millwright and what she's doing now at the Laurel. That's what I love about what I have that opportunity to have that perk. But realistically, I'm sending these people to, now they have a story to tell to their 30 other friends of where they went for birthday dinner for the wife's birthday and that experience, and tell more about Ashley. They're going to take it and run with it a lot farther than even I can. And that's what's awesome about what we have here in our state. I just think the story maybe has been dormant and not told. And I think in recent years, with our association, the state, and others have taken it to heart and done a better job. And we can't stop that. We have to, elevate it even another level because I don't just want 6 semifinalists. I want to see us win a James Beard every year. I hate to say it. I want to see, I want to have a real conversation about Michelin star.
Right.
Can we bring that came to Boston? Can we bring that into the region? Maybe it's not a Connecticut specific, but can we have a regional look at that? Because I think we have Michelin star, in my opinion, rated restaurants in our state that should be judged that way. And guess what? That brings tons of tourism and tons of travel as well. So I'm excited for continuing to grow this and continue to tell culinary tourism. And even I mentioned like the hotel side of, we have to tell those stories as well and tell places for people to come and stay and have those unique experiences. Are second to none. So it's going to be fun in this next evolution of CRAA.
Yeah, really. We're going to wrap up in a second, but one thing I want to talk about is you started in 2018. You've seen tremendous growth within the association, the rebrand, which is just happening right now. But talk to me about some of the things that are most rewarding to you over these last several years.
Wow, such a great question, Peter. I think, rewarding to me, I guess one of the big things that I've tried to, it's been tough to reflect on because the last 2 weeks have been really hectic to get us to the CRAA because it didn't just happen like that. It's taken years. But I'm so proud that we got to this. Obviously, like my staff is like, we're kind of building the plane as we fly it. We need to make sure we have all these resources for hotels and who's going to do what. But I've had a chance a little bit to reflect in the last couple of weeks just about how proud I am that we've gotten to this moment and that this is the next big step. This is a huge step in our history of our association and where we're going to go. And I'm super proud of that. I also, I'm proud of just like where our board has come as well. I mean, obviously the board of directors of where we were to where they are now and the different people that have come on and given them leadership roles and them stepping in and having an impact that they do. And, I still have a lot to learn. I think we all do in different ways. But at the same time, I'm proud of like taking a step back and saying, hey, 8 years ago, I didn't know what, I'll make the running joke, my chairman was Dan Miser down in Mystic. His mom was my first boss in college athletics. I was looking to go find another job in college athletics when my AD at the time left for St. John's. And I'll never forget, she's like, what do you think of the restaurant association? You would be perfect for that job. I spit out my coffee at breakfast. I was like, what are we talking about? And to think like looking back that far, it doesn't feel like it's that far some days to where, this association has come. And I'm proud of that because at the end of the day, I say to everybody, I was saying today, like, just because you think you know what your future holds, what job you're going to do, it doesn't, life has a different path and you got to own that. And I'm proud of all of those things, but and I'm just looking forward to, the future of the CRAA and how much more impact that we can make.
Scott, it's been great having you on the podcast. Thank you so much.
I love being down here. I got to get some merch, I think, before I leave to make sure I can represent Stanford well up in the Hartford County area. But no, I appreciate you, PJ. I appreciate what you're doing and continuing to do because we need more of you telling our story. And it shows with this podcast. I know many others have already told me they've been on it, and I'm proud of them, and I've seen those. But I'm fortunate to be asked to be on this, so thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Real quick, where can people find you, learn more about the association?
All right, so right now at ctrestaurant.org, we're working through our website. We're doing a full rebrand. I didn't even mention that. We're working with New Haven, and Anthony's actually helping us with the rebrand.
Oh, great.
And we're working with Box 8 in New Haven, keeping it within the four walls of the state to help us rebrand. That hopefully will be done over the next couple months. But ctrestaurant.org, at CT Restaurant, all of our socials. Obviously, I'm pretty generic at Scott Dolch on Instagram and everything else as I try to stay on Instagram as much as I can and maybe try to get on TikTok a little bit with my younger staff of helping me, stay in the realm of new social, new digital. But yeah, I hoping anyone listening in, hope you can make it down to the CRAzies as well. It would definitely be a big plug. If you haven't been, as I said to many of the operators, I hope they can make it down in 2026.
It's amazing. Thank you so much, Scott.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.